Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Talk About It Tuesday. I'm your host, Malin.
And I'm your other host, Jamie.
And today's article is one that I think you either love or you hate this time of year, and that is the daylight savings time.
Yay!
And that just happened to us on Sunday. So this is still fresh in all of our minds.
Or still impacting us and causing me to lose sleep.
And some of us just took a nap and we're better. We're fine. So I think there's a wide variety of people that are impacted. Before we begin, let's just acknowledge that there's some people that are impacted more than others. I am fortunate enough not to be one that gets too much disruption, except for the day. Like when I wake up that night after the time change, I can feel that I lost an hour of sleep. Sometimes what I've done to kind of help with that is I've just gone to bed an hour early, but that's not always the case. And so I do feel it in the morning. But outside of that, I was lucky enough, Jamie, just as we segue for a second, after that day, I don't really have any other issues or problems with the time change. Does this impact your sleep at all?
Sorry, what was that? I almost fell asleep. Yes, this impacts my sleep a lot, actually. This is that time change thing it gets me every time. The winter one is not as bad. The one that happens in November when we gain an hour isn't as bad. Although I don't really gain an hour because I totally stay up later than I should, but I don't gain an hour. But it's whatever.
So again, it's open to interpretation, but let's get into the article because I have a feeling there's going to be some differencing of opinions on this. All right, today's article comes to us from People. This was published back on March 9th of 2024. So this is real fresh in all of our minds.
Hot off the presses.
Right off the digital press line.
Right. The
title reads, "The Daylight Saving Time Health Effects You Might Not Be Expecting, According to a Cardiology Specialist." So the subheading on this is, Dr. Roshana Kulkarni tells people that everyone is affected by daylight savings time and shared the positive and negative health effects tied to it. So this is a rather long article. I'm not going to be able to go through every little piece of it, but I do want to touch on what this really talks about. So Dr. Kulkarni was going through and saying about the effects that daylight savings time has on individuals. She goes through and first identifies what daylight savings times is. I'm going to indulge everyone just for a moment. For those listeners that maybe don't have to go through this, this is a weekend event that happens twice a year, so it is biannually. In March, we go forward an hour to start our daylight savings time. So we actually lose an hour of sleep. So sometime over around the 2 o'clock time frame, the clocks all advance by 1 hour. Suddenly, through magic, becomes 3 a.m. When we shut off daylight savings time, this happens in November, and that we gain an hour of sleep. So again, at that 2 o'clock hour, the clocks roll back to 1 o'clock. I'm not going to go into the history of why that happened. It was a long time ago. From my understanding, it was having to do with farmers and when they were able to go out into the field and having more light during the day. But again, this last Sunday, so on March 10th at 2 a.m., that's when daylight savings started, and all of our clocks magically went to 3 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Kulkarni then goes on into the article and talks about all the effects that this may have on people's health, specifically around the cardiovascular system, and how this has an impact to the circadian rhythm that everybody has, and how this can disrupt that. There's been a lot of details within this article that talks about the significance of these conditions and how that daylight savings could actually play a role into that. And the article does touch on, although it doesn't explicitly link daylight savings time to an increase in heart attacks and stroke, but it does mention that usually on Mondays that there is an increase to that. And so they're thinking that there is a tie at some point to that from daylight savings time. Again, it's all coming through the circadian rhythm. That's really in a nutshell what this article is about. I got to be honest, I take a little bit of issue with some of the things that are in here just because I do find it to be a little bit of a reach. Dr. Kulkarni did not explicitly say that this is a main cause of diabetes or strokes or heart attacks. However, it is implied that there is an impact to those risks from daylight savings time, which I'm not going to lie, Jamie, I have a hard time believing.
Well, you know what I just thought of is let's be real honest with ourselves here and remember that this is People magazine. So we're not talking about hard hitting like New England Journal of Medicine or something like that. It is People magazine. But there were 4 things that I found in there. It was the sleep disruption, the stroke and heart attack risk increase, cognitive function was affected, and depression could also increase. So those were the 4 things. And I don't know, I guess I don't take much issue because I didn't feel like it was super declarative that this is going to happen because of this. It's, I really got more of a vibe of, hey, if you're already at higher risk, be cautious and take care of yourself during this time because those things can cause additional risk factors for those who have predisposition for these things. What I did like, though, that you didn't hit on was the end of the article, Malin, when they talked about all the benefits of the springing forward with our clocks magically at 3 a.m. Did you see those down there?
Go ahead and take us through them.
Well, she talked, really, there were 2. So 4 risks and 2 benefits. So take that as you will. We do get an increase in vitamin D this time of year because the light is out longer. And there's also more opportunities for activities, which can positively affect your health too. And the other thing, I guess, in the article is that she did, to be fair, she did talk about like how you can prevent an increased risk by taking care of yourself and making sure you're protecting your circadian rhythm prior to, which doesn't do any of you any good. So I apologize because this is a couple days late, but we could have helped you ahead of time maybe.
Again, this is where maybe I have a little bit of cynicism in me today, but
maybe.
How convenient for the doctor to play both sides of the field. So there's a benefit and a positive that is caused by daylight saving time that could be impacting or helping with depression. So I know in the article she said depression could be an increased factor because of the losing of that sleep and the daylight savings. But I find it also interesting that she says that's also a positive because you'll get more vitamin D, which I don't know about you, but I've heard that when people suffer from the seasonal mood depression, I think it's SAD, is that what it's called?
Seasonal affective disorder.
One of the things they tell them to go do is beef up their vitamin D or get underneath a light because it triggers that vitamin D release. And so I think it's funny that in one breath, she's like, hey, this could impact and cause depression or impact depression. And at the same time, it's like, but guess what? You'll get more vitamin D, which will help you with dealing with depression and start making you feel better. And the increased activity is also another way that we can fight depression. So I found this article to be a little bit more of a doctor's opinion and maybe trying to connect dots that aren't there. I know that's not exactly how you saw it, or it doesn't seem like that's how you saw it. But I think I just think it's funny. I just think she's not using scare tactics. That's not what I want to say. But I really have a hard time understanding how 1 hour of sleep is really going to have that big of an impact. Even if it extends, let's say it disrupts somebody's circadian rhythm for, let's just say 2 weeks, I don't see how that would have any kind of noticeable effects on somebody's health, even if they are in a higher risk of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, depression, all of those.
Well, I will tell you that I do have some very big cognitive delays the week after. As I paused to think about if I wanted to add anything to that, I'm telling you, Malin, this is a thing for me. And I guess for me, no, I didn't feel like it was declarative or, even medical advice. I feel like it was People magazine saying, hey, did you know this could be a thing? But I do think that there are people who experience this time of year very differently. Just like you may not be affected by seasonal affective disorder, but somebody else might be. So I guess I would say, I hope if this is something that affects you negatively and that you really do struggle through this time, that you make sure to take care of yourself and get some rest and, do what you need to do to rejuvenate and get your circadian rhythm back on track, because that's the challenge for me every year, is trying to get back into the, like, this is about the time of, I'm not gonna lie, Malin, this is about the time of year. March is when I'm starting to hit my stride, because spring is coming and I'm getting all ready and feeling like I'm organized and have my life together, and then daylight savings comes and makes me want to stay in bed for a week. So it's just it's like why do we do this to us?
I don't know.
Ourselves? Why don't we just leave it?
Because even something for myself, I take a nap, and the whole effects of the losing an hour is gone, right? Because I'm like, okay, I recouped my hour. I'm fine. I do want to touch on for a second, though, why can't we just decide to leave the time alone? I think I know I said at the early part of this introduction that we are not going to go into the history, which I'm not prepared to do, nor did I feel like it was interesting enough to look up, apparently. But I do want to just ask the question, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Like, why don't we just say, let's move it and be done? I would say, let's keep it in daylight savings and then never touch it again. Does anybody have a really good answer of why we keep doing this, going back and forth at all?
Well, especially in modern society, like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, here's the reality of it. Here's what I don't understand. We move the clock back and forth. It doesn't actually change the amount of daylight or sunlight we get in a daytime, right? Days are shorter in the winter and they're longer in the summer. So it just changes the time that we're expected to show up at work or expected to show up at school. I don't understand why. I don't get it. I really wish we could come to some sort of agreement.
Well, and to kind of build off that for a second, you're right. It doesn't increase it's not the reason why days are getting longer.
Right.
It is the reason why I'm awake more to experience that longer time period. That's it. And when you talk about an hour, I'm sure it made sense then, but really how much of a shift did it do? Like, I know we're talking about the effects, and some people really get their circadian rhythm gets messed up, and it does have a little bit longer effects to them. But we're talking an hour. Like, I could almost argue if it was more than that, maybe there is a need to do it, but we're talking 60 minutes that, in my opinion, has it's more of a problem than it is a help to keep moving back and forth and to remember the clocks and remember to do all these things. It just seems like it's a lot of jumping through hoops for something that's really not important anymore. And whoever's listening, I would back just getting rid of it altogether.
I would say that I tie checking my fire alarms with daylight savings, changing the batteries, that whole thing. Okay.
I do too, but I'd also set just an alarm on my phone now that says I would happily exchange daylight savings being turned on and off and just set a reminder on my phone.
Yeah, no, I'm with you in the long run. But I will say, again, I just want to make sure that anyone who's listening, we are not diminishing or devaluing your experience. If you experience this, please make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I just don't want anybody to just
take
listen
a nap.
To your body.
Just take a nap.
Listen to your body and take care of yourself, because it's important. Self-care is care.
And that's Jamie's. I love that. Wrap everybody in a warm hug. I'm more like, just take a nap. You'll be fine. Like, it's 1 hour. You'll be fine.
Well, there goes that empathy. And never mind. Sorry about that. Thanks for joining us today.
Empathy's a muscle, and today I feel pretty weak with it. So there's really not much else to talk about with this, I don't think. I think it was interesting, though, to see that a doctor could maybe speculate the impacts that this could have on health. But for me, I'm not buying it. I just don't think there's that strong of a connection. So
yes. Well, hopefully by next week, I'll be back to my perky, normal, well-rested self. I'll just be over here, napping.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up for today. We will make sure we are back next week with a whole new article and a new set of opinions.
And don't forget to tune in on Thursday for a regular episode of Roundtable Mindset, where we're just going to inundate you with all kinds of things to grow our empathy muscles and all kinds of other stuff. So hope to see you there.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.